morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Riccardo Lattanzi, and before we begin, I want to take the opportunity to thank Pete Ackerman, Ilaria Costa, and all the staff of the Columbus Citizen Foundation for hosting us in such a beautiful place. And then I would like to thank our sponsors. So Velenosi Wine, which, despite what the name suggests, is one of the producers of wine in the Marche region. And tonight we have the white wine is the sparkling Serena, and the red one is the Rosicena. And
they're all wonderful.
They're all beverage. And then the other sponsor is Pasta Gasm, which is also outside. They will, I think, for after the conference, they will have some handmade pasta. It's a counter service restaurant, which is also near Madison Square Park, and they do handmade pasta. And they're also from Marche. The three owners, actually, they came here 5 months ago, and they were doing different things. One of the hairdresser, one of the mailman, but they decided to open this, and it's a great success. And so why I'm mentioning a lot the Marche region is because this event is co-organized by MIA, Marche Latin America, which is the association that promotes the culture and tradition of Marche in the United States, based in New York. And thanks to MIA, in 2003, Marche for the first time participated in the Columbus Day Parade on Fifth Avenue, and it was a great success. But despite that, it's still not known among New Yorkers and in general in the United States, and that's surprising because if you go on Madison Avenue, there's a luxury store, shoe stores by Tod's, Bogan, Tandon, they're all from Marche, or now they have a new, like jaw-dropping showroom by Fortuna Frau near the Empire State Building is also, and yet it's not very well known, so that's what we're trying to do. But let's move to the, and also maybe I'll say something more about Marche because I wrote it down, so you may have enjoyed the painting Madonna and Child and Strong with Sense at the Met, yet you may not know that the author, Raphael, was from Marche. So were Giacomo Leopardi, the greatest Italian poet from the 19th century, Gioacchino Rossini, the composer, and also Beniamino Gigli, who was the most famous, one of the most famous opera singers of all time. And the region itself is beautiful, also Lonely Planet that saw a few years ago. And of course, I agree. And then, so I invite every one of you to check out the Marche. And now back to the main topic. So the plan is that people discussion. I will mostly be trying to ask questions. Francesca is the more expert here. So besides being the president of MIA Marche Latin America, I'm also a professor of radiology and electrical and biomedical engineering at NYU London Health. And I'm the director of the Center for Biomedical Imaging. But tonight I have the opportunity to talk about artificial intelligence with a true expert on the subject. And it's my pleasure so now to introduce Dr. Francesca Rossi, who also got a Marche like me. The bio, I didn't memorize it, so I didn't memorize the bio, but I'm going to read it. So Francesca Rossi is an IBM Fellow and the IBM AI Ethics Global Leader. She's based at the J.T. Watson IBM Research Lab in the Westchester County. And her research interests in artificial intelligence include constrained reasoning, preferences, multi-agent systems, computational social choices, neurosymbolic AI, cognitive architectures, and AI value alignment. She co-authored over 220 scientific publications. She's a fellow of both the Worldwide and the European Association of AI, and among other roles, she's currently serving as the president of the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence. And Francesca is also a fantastic popularizer, and last year she published this book, which is called Intelligenza Artificiale in Italian, and is having a great success. So let's start from the book, maybe. So artificial intelligence is not new. In fact, the association you are the president of was founded in 1979. So why the book? Why now?
Thanks, Riccardo. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Lisa and the whole staff for hosting us in such a beautiful place. So the book was, so first of all, the book is in Italian. So, so most of you maybe know Italian, they speak Italian, they read it. And it's intended to be for non-experts of AI or of any technology. And the main goal of the book is really to help people of all experiences and backgrounds to understand what AI really is at this point, how we got here from the beginning of the history of AI, and what are the real capabilities, limitations, and risks of these technologies. And about the risks, also what we can do about the risks. Who has responsibility of doing something, mitigating the risks? Companies, users, governments, and so on. The book is written in a very non-technical way, so that hopefully it's accessible to everybody. It also can be read in a non-linear way, not necessarily from the first page to the last one. It has boxes and things that you can read only that part if you're interested. And also, it's not just written by me, because every chapter has like 2 pages, 1 or 2 pages written by somebody else, some friend, colleague that is an expert on a specific topic, like impact of AI on jobs, or robotics, or some different topics. And so they very graciously donated this very small contribution, but important, I think, to the book. And there are 7 of them in most chapters. One of them, for example, is from somebody who is not with us anymore, a Nobel Prize, Daniel Kahneman, who wrote about human versus artificial intelligence. So the book really wants to help people, because the media that people are receiving are sometimes very confusing. They say one thing and then they say another thing, and then so people that are not into that technology may be confused. So should we be worried about AI? Should we be excited about AI? So they don't know what to think. And so that's the idea, to remove the confusion in a simple language. And by the way, now that I say language, I wrote the book myself. I didn't ask any AI system.
So we'll try to cover most of the chapters. But so as you explained, that many people are working on AI, and it's a continuously evolving field. And a hot topic nowadays is the possibility of artificial general intelligence, or AGI, type of AI that's the definition said it would possess cognitive abilities similar to a human. And a few days ago, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the company that created ChatGPT, said they already figured it out how to do AGI, and now is focusing on the next step, which is super intelligence, how we call it. But so my question is this all marketing? What are the real capabilities of AI and the limitation?
Yeah. Okay, so as you mentioned earlier, AI has been around for a very long time, although people have now the possibility since 2 years ago, when ChatGPT was published, in almost about 2 years ago, in November 2022. So people have the opportunity to interact directly with an AI system. You ask questions, it responds in a language which is our language, human language. But AI has been around for a long time. As a research field, it actually started in 1956. That's when the artificial intelligence term was first used. And then a lot of research in over 70 years, but even as applications in our everyday life, we have been using AI for many years. For example, whenever we use a credit card, there is embedded inside, we don't see it, but there is an AI system that estimates whether that transaction that we are doing with the credit card is fraudulent or not. And if the system estimates that it is, then it tells the bank, and then we receive a telephone call from the bank, I think there is a transaction that somebody made and you're not you, and so on. We have emails that automatically are put on the spam folder. So there are a lot of things that we do every day that are using AI, but we have not seen because it was hidden inside these services or these systems. Now we see it. No, now we see it, and not only we see it, and we see that this system can write in a very similar way as a human being would write. He writes in a grammatically correct, always correct way, and he responds most of the time, with a good answer to our questions. And this can give us the perception that since these systems can write very good natural language, then they have also all the other capabilities of a human being. So since he can write like a human being, he must know what he writes, and so he must be able to reason, he must be able to reflect upon all the other characteristics of a human being. And this is not true. This is not true, because the way these systems, like ChatGPT or others, are built on training on large amounts of text, the text that you find on the web, that people generate and put on the web. And then they're trained to generate one word at a time, one after the other one. And every time they generate a word, they generate the word that, according to their training over this big amount of text, is the most probable to follow the previous text. And then the next word, and then the next one, and then the next one. And in that way, they generate entire sentences and even big documents. And in doing that, they are amazing, of course, they're very useful, but there is nothing that allows them in this way of building them to recognize sometimes that what they write is maybe not factually true. Because there is no embedded reasoning capabilities. The reasoning capabilities, apparent reasoning capability, and sometimes useful and correct, comes from this combination of what they find in the training data to generate one word after the other one. So in my view, I belong to a company and have been trained to not comment on any other company. but in my view is that we are not close to artificial general intelligence. We are not close to having systems that have the same capabilities of a human being, in particular the reasoning capabilities. Still, these systems are very much tied to the training data that you use to train them. So if you ask a question that is not really something that they find in the training data, then they may have problems. And this does not mean that they are not useful, but it means that we must know that they still have these limitations and they may make mistakes, because otherwise we use them in a non-appropriate way. For example, you may have seen on the media that a New York lawyer, like 1 year ago, about 1 year ago, for a case that he was following, he asked ChatGPT to produce some precedents to bring to the judge, and ChatGPT gave him 6 precedents for that case, and so he brought them to the judge, and then it was discovered they were all not true. They were not precedents. They were not existing. Okay, so I don't think that lawyer wanted to, cheat or do something. But it just was not aware, I think, that this system needs to be handled with care, especially when they give you factual information. You need to go and then check with the trusted sources. So the responsibility also of the user to make sure that you use it in an appropriate way.
So yeah, you mentioned ChatGPT, but also most of us have probably had a conversation with Siri, Google, or Alexa, and there are many other applications. Some of them where like hallucination can be less of a problem. And I was reading that at the recent Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, I think it was the CEO of NVIDIA, he said that nowadays only 10% of the video games have generated with traditional geometry tools, and 90% are all generative AI. And so I didn't know that. And so one question maybe here is, what are other cool applications you know of which are changing the world that we know it and we may not be aware of?
Yes, it's true that large language models like ChatGPT generate text, but there are similar models with slightly different techniques that are built that generate images or videos. Okay, so just like a text is one word after the other one, also an image is some sense is one pixel after the other. Okay? So these systems can generate images and videos that are very, very realistic. And so they are used, in generating games, but in general, also they're used in generating many kinds of things, and also things that also images and videos that are not true. Sometimes because of this phenomenon that I mentioned that is called technically hallucination. So generating text or images that are not true but are very plausible, but sometimes even intentionally, like deepfakes is an intentional way to use AI to generate images or videos or sounds that are not true, maybe to the detriment of some person, some candidate in an election, or this has been done already and we've seen it. So there are really, it's really difficult to understand the limitations of the application areas of these systems, because whenever, for example, large language model, whenever we have to generate content, these systems can be helpful to help us accelerate the generation of content, whether it's a summary of a document, or whether it's to retrieve some information from a set of documents or policies, or whether it's to translate from one language to another one. We already had translators before. They were based on traditional machine learning, but now they are even more capable. Or so there are many, many different, or even when we have to write an email, or when we have to write some initial ideas about a text that we need to create. So there is no limit really to the help that they can give to humans that need to create content, whether it's images or text and so on. However, it's important to remember that, again, they have these limitations. So whenever we get them, it's just, we should not just delegate completely this work, this content creation, because otherwise that content may have issues. So I just wanted to say, maybe we'll talk later, but that students use it a lot to do their tasks.
I have a question.
We'll talk about it.
So yeah, in fact, when I hear about generative AI, always in my mind is like the ethics risk. And there's this company here in New York, which I think was founded in Long Island City, 11 Labs. You can upload like less than a minute of a voice, an audio file with your voice. Their system learns your voice, and then you can make them read whatever you want with your voice. And it's very difficult to distinguish. So there are a lot of risks, and you are an expert in AI ethics. In fact, you were a member of the committee that provided the guidelines for the European, for the recent policies, which were done in Europe, were criticized sometimes in the United States. So I don't know if you want to talk about that experience and maybe what's the difference here and what you think should be done.
Yeah, so Europe, the European Union has recently approved a law on AI. And this law is going to be applied all over the European Union, in all the states in the same way. Okay? And this law has been discussed for more than 2 years before being approved. And this discussion, such a long discussion, engaged also other non-European governments. So the discussion that took place in Europe about that law was also expanded to other places, also in the US. But so some concepts are shared between the Europe and the US about how to regulate AI, how to transform the ethical considerations about AI into laws. And when you do this transformation, you may make choices that you don't want these choices to be stifling innovation, damaging innovation, but you also want to protect user rights, of course, and the values that are important for that government and those citizens. And you don't want to be too tied to the specific technology that is being used right now, because otherwise the law will become obsolete very soon. So all these discussions that took place in Europe before the law was finally approved, they also engaged the US and countries. In Europe, at the end, the law, the policymakers decided to make this law where there are 4 levels of risks, not associated to AI, but associated to the uses of AI. So there are some uses of AI that are called unacceptable risks. So they're not going to be possible in Europe. For example, using AI for subliminal manipulation, using AI for mass surveillance, or biometric real-time identification. Those are unacceptable risks. Then there is a big chunk of uses that are called high risk. And for those, that's where the law puts a lot of obligations for the providers, the developers, the deployers, the users. So a lot of assurances that the AI that you use doesn't make discriminations, is explainable, transparent, and so on, respects privacy, and so on. And then there are less risky applications where there are less and less obligations. So that was the choice that was made in Europe, and the choice to have a law that will apply the same all over the European Union. Here, it's completely different, of course. Some concepts maybe are shared, like the risk analysis or similar. But here, of course, at the federal level, we don't have many laws around AI. We have a lot of laws by the states and by the cities. For example, California has a privacy law similar to the one that is in Europe, but other states do not have it. Or New York City has a law on AI systems used for human resources that other cities and other states do not have. So it's a bit of a scattered scenario compared to Europe, where there is one law for the whole European Union.
Then you need to apply the law challenge. But yeah, I was thinking my field is biomedical imaging, so I guess I'm in the risk 3 area. And there are many companies now working on an AI system to help the radiologists to analyze the images, but none of them want to take responsibility. So at the end, it's always the doctor who's responsible. So that's why they're not so widespread used. But so maybe let me switch gears. So because ethics is not the only concern. In fact, a lot of people don't even care too much about ethics, but they're more concerned about AI taking away jobs. And we always reassure people to say, yeah, no, it's not going to take jobs. It's going to improve your job, create new jobs that don't exist. But people are still worried. So what is the truth? What's the truth? What's true about that?
Okay, I can tell you a little bit more my thoughts in general, but then maybe you can tell us about your personal experience in your field. And yes, I agree that AI should be used to help and support human activities. So, of course, there will be some tasks that are going to be delegated to code or to AI. But most of the tasks are really going to be done better when the human being is supported by the AI system that can provide options, that can provide some possible solutions, possible diagnosis, or possible therapies in the healthcare domain, or in general, possible decisions, and then the human being considers even discussing with AI, because right now with this generative AI, you don't just ask a question and receive an answer, but you can have a real dialogue. And so that is where I think even Eric Brynjolfsson from Stanford University in the book has 2 pages about impact on AI and jobs, and he mentioned the fact that really the best decisions are made when humans are supported by AI, rather than the human being alone without AI or the AI alone. But of course, also there is another reason why people are worried. Two reasons, I think. First, because in general, no, when there is a new technology, a new way of doing things, it's very easy to see the jobs that may be impacted, but it's not that as easy to see the new jobs that will be created. This happens with the other technological revolutions of the past, where there were many new jobs that were created, if you look backward, but at that time people did not see that, but they only saw the jobs that were impacted, where people were losing the jobs. The second reason that people are more worried now that in other technological revolution is that AI evolves very rapidly, it can be replicated very rapidly, so the transformation of society is very fast. And so while in previous technological revolutions, like at the beginning of the previous century, people had time, for example, to create an education system for the new generation and so on. So people had time to transition to the new state. Now, instead, things have to be done much faster. And so the worry also comes from how are societies, governments going to be able to be as fast in helping people maybe transition and changing jobs, but also transforming the way they do their jobs. Some jobs will be eliminated, many jobs will be created, but all jobs will be transformed. Basically, all jobs will be transformed because people will need to be able to learn how to do the job with AI. So tell us about it.
Before, I always like this as an example from the past when Excel was introduced, the accountants say, oh, we're going to lose the job, but no, they just became more efficient. Or the trade agency with Expedia, they just became better, but there's still people working in that area. So in my job, it's been a concern because 8 years ago, Geoff Hinton, one of the people who won the Nobel Prize this year for physics, he in a public speech, he said we should stop training radiologists because they will be replaced completely by AI. That actually turned out not to be true, but also caused a problem because now there's a shortage of radiologists because a lot of people didn't go into radiology. But for us, AI, of course, did not replace the radiologists, but also it's been very useful to make things more efficient. Now, we can do an MRI, which previous magnetic resonance imaging and a diagnostic exam, they used to take 20 minutes, we can do it in 4 minutes. As a researcher, we're all happy of that. The companies are happy, but the radiologist, the hospital is happy because in the same time you can do 4 MRIs. But the radiologists are not happy because it's the same number of radiologists, so they have to read 4 times the exams. There's always these considerations. But in general, we see it as a co-pilot that can help. For example, if you think a lot of things that were done manually, like measuring the size of a tumor in different images, it's always an error if you do it manually. Now with AI, you can do it consistently and really track the size of the tumor, or you can do many other things like segmenting the anatomy, run automatically some analysis, or go back and let the AI tool to find images of the same patients from previous years for comparison, which the radiologist does, but it takes like 20 minutes to find them. Now they're automatically presented. So it's really a co-pilot and it's helping. There are still risks because also people are exploring the use of generative AI to help with the image generation, and sometimes there are hallucinations and those are hard to catch. So there are people working on trying to make sure that if the image is not correct, it's pointed out, it's flat down. But it's basically, my background is not in AI, but now almost every single project I work on includes AI. It's unavoidable, so we need to know what it is and use it. And I'm gonna add something. Otherwise, I want to maybe I'll go to the education, which was something you hint about it. Because this morning, I didn't know how to introduce this, but this morning I read about preliminary finding of a pilot project conducted in Nigeria. I don't know if you heard about it. It's recent. So the project used the large language models like ChatGPT, that was like ChatGPT-4, to support learning of the English language during an after-school program. And some students were randomly assigned to participate in the program, and those turned out they were more engaged in learning and significantly outperformed their peers who were not selected for the after-school program. And in particular, a 6-week of after-school program, they lead to an increase in test scoring, which was equivalent to 2 years of the typical learning gains. So the studies show that if you use AI, it can be an effective visual tutor in education. But at the same time, as you were mentioning before, students may also take advantage of AI to cheat, right? So what can we do to make sure that AI is used to improve learning rather than as the shortcut to bypass learning?
So yes, so definitely if it's used properly, it's very engaging for the students, as you say in their pilot study. And there are many companies that are using AI to provide personalized tutors that allow each student to go with its own learning speed. And that it improves a lot of the ability of the student to learn, because usually normal class, everybody has to go to the same speed, and some people maybe goes faster, some people slower. Not only some people are more visual, some people are more text, so there are different modalities, and personalized tutors is a very important possible application for AI already. But of course, that's the way to use it, to really be engaging with the student and allowing the students to do much more than they would do by themselves by being more engaged and more at their level and their speed. It's true that many students are using AI to write their essays. For example, essays that you have to write to apply to a school. And there nobody checks, just receive an essay. So, or, when they are enrolled already, that they receive a task, generate some document, and they ask ChatGPT to generate the document. And this is definitely something to avoid. And you cannot avoid that by saying it's not allowed to use ChatGPT, because they will use it anyway. So that's not the solution, but it's really to avoid, because again, bypassing the learning process. So because in some sense, when you are asked to write an essay, it's not important really that essay is well written. What is important is not the result, but the process that you have to follow in order to write that essay. Because an essay on a certain topic, if you write it well, it means that you looked around for documents about the topic, you compared, you combined, you build a structure in your head, about these subtopics, the story, and then finally you write the essay. So all these steps are very important, not to write the essay. It's not that important that you write the essay, but to structure a mind so that you become a very capable of reasoning in your life. And so to be a very constructive and good actor in society. So that you are able to compare different opinions, you are able to respect others. All those things that you want in a good human being are there in the ability, to structure your mind. If you just ask ChatGPT, you bypass everything. So, this effort that we have to make is especially to be done by the educational system that needs to understand how to engage students more, so that they use these systems to be able to do more learning and more of this mind structuring rather than less, and also supported by a different form of evaluation. If you just evaluate an essay and you don't know who wrote it, then so that was a proxy how much the student had followed the learning process until 2 years ago. Now it's not a proxy of that anymore. So we have to find other proxies of that signal that the student has followed the learning process. So it's a big effort, I think, for the educational system, but I think that it needs to be done.
Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, as the students, sometimes you end up reviewing scientific articles by people who just clearly ChatGPT to the introduction. You may miss it if you're distracted, but sometimes it's all invented because they don't know. But so maybe, yeah, we have time for another question before the Q&A.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe when I say, so now general comments, we see all the major technology, the major 7 technology companies, they're all investing a lot on AI to train these large language models, which to train they cost millions and billions of dollars. And they're all competing to be the top one, but there's not really a return on investment for that really match the expenses. So basically nobody wants to be left behind. But we know that only a few winners will really monetize this. So people talk about the bubble of AI. So now all this investment, at some point, there will be like a few leading companies and the other will be left behind. So what do you think if you think also that I think there is a bubble, if you think there is a bubble, and what's going to happen?
Well, it's true that right now to train one of these large language models, you need many months of several, even thousands, 50,000 GPUs, so computers that are very powerful, to train them on these huge amounts of text from the web. No? And this is very expensive because you have to buy all these computers. It's also kind of impacting the environment because you need a lot of energy to do that, no? And a lot of water to cool all these systems. And so that is something that many are working on, how to build equally performant large language models with less data and therefore less investment and less resource consumption. And I think that we have seen a lot of improvement in building the so-called small language models that can be as performant, at least in some domain, maybe not a generic one that you can ask questions about everything and everywhere, no? But small language models that can be good for some particular domain scenario with less investments and less resource consumption. And that, I think we've seen a lot of improvement, even in the research community. There are a lot of researchers and companies as well, of course, that are working a lot on that. At IBM, there are researchers that are, that are really focusing on these more energy efficient language models. So that could be one trend that avoids impacting to the environment, but also this big investment and makes it more accessible to many organizations that don't have that amount of resources to be able to be part of this advancement of the technology. Because, for example, universities, there is full of talents, and universities all over the place, all over the world, full of talent in AI, but they don't have the resources to build their own language models because they cannot buy, 50,000 GPUs that cost millions of dollars. So that is something that, and there is another trend also to make these language models open source, so to make it available for free to everybody that wants to use them, to vet them, scrutinize them, and possibly change them, add more data, and so on. And that is also another trend that will lead to more access to these language models to also organizations and people that don't have that amount of resources.
And I know you're going to mention other companies, but I think it's Microsoft reopening the nuclear plant in Pennsylvania to provide the energy to train this large language model. So spending billions, I don't know how much the revenue is now, so hopefully it will go somewhere. And I agree the new trend with the small large language model, I think is the way to go. Because it's not just training them, it's the inference of when you use them, It costs every time you type something in ChatGPT, it costs more than your refrigerator. But we're not paying for it. It's all free for now. So so should we?
Yeah, I think we should open it up for questions.
It's the only microphone I have to push.
My question is two-part. My name is Linda. Part. For me, I'm a novelist and a journalist. But as a novelist, AI is not talking about creativity, which comes from like somewhere here, and it's never going to be my voice. My grandkids tried to tell them to write a story in my voice, which it picked up, and God forbid it was me, but that's me, and I'm 500 years old, so that's one thing. But my grandson, who, as we know, is like a 16-year-old Caravaggio, what happens to a kid who, from 6 years old, was selling his artwork? And he thinks outside, he doesn't even know there's a box, let alone outside the box. What happens to creative kids?
I think that, I mean, I agree that creativity is something, creativity has many dimensions in my view, and some of them can be the recombination of things that we have seen in the past, which is something that AI may be able to do. But there is some other form of creativity that is not just recombination of things that you've seen, that is just like something completely different, and that, at least for now, AI is not able to do. And so you see that these systems, they more or less, independently of who asks questions, they more or less generate similar things. Because they are trained more or less all on the same training data, right? And by the way, there is another issue with the training on all the text that is on the web, because the other issue is that you have just a mix of all the cultures, because the text comes from everywhere in the world, and some cultures are more represented, of course, because the people in that culture upload more things to the web. Some cultures are much less. Like, for example, in India, there are more than 1 billion people there, but there are only 11,000 web pages, personal web pages. That culture is not very well represented compared to the US or Europe and so on. So there is also this other issue of using AI for being creative, but creative and mixing everything together depending on the representativity. But I think that the AI can be used to be even more creative, of the second form of creativity, but supported by this basic creativity, which is just a recombination of things that AI has seen on the training data. So I think that there are ways, and I think there are artists that use AI to be more creative. But it's true that kids are growing up with these systems, and they should be educated in how to use them well to spark their creativity rather than again delegate.
But for kids that need to draw all the time or need to write all the time, I mean, if I can't write, I can't breathe. I don't want somebody. What happens to the real creative spark?
I mean, as you say, you prefer to write yourself, right? So you're worried about people or kids that instead they get content from these machines?
Yeah, I mean, I know the question you're trying to ask, but I think that the world adapts as we move on. I mean, I know what you're saying, but I see it with my students at Pratt. I don't know that I really need the microphone. I have a loud New York voice, but I know what you're saying, and there's always that tension, right? With every technology that comes along, we have this fear that some piece of us is lost because we're increasingly reliant on technology. But I mean, I see it with my students is that, 10 years ago, I could spot a paper that somebody had just gone on to Google and, not really put any thought in it. And, I would have to say to the student, I'm going to give you another week and you try and actually do some research. And, this year when the semester started, in the fall, there were lots of warnings to all the faculty to be on the alert for students that were using ChatGPT. And I had one student that I'm absolutely certain wrote a paper that way. But you could tell, because it's just what you said, there was no spark in the voice. I mean, the facts were there, but it was not knitted together in the way you expect a graduate student to think about things. And so I could tell the difference. Now, maybe the technology will get better and better and I won't be able to spot that change.
AI is still in its infancy.
Right. But I think in terms of creativity, there's always going to be creative people. And I think for young people coming up today with a lot of the technology, that's just going to be their life, their creativity will come in other forms. I don't think we lose it. I think every generation has a different way of expressing that creativity. So I don't think it's as dire as we think.
No, but also,
You can go back and think of like digital photography. It didn't take away the creativity of photographer, or Photoshop didn't make less creative. It's just the tools.
or painters.
Of painters.
Painters
Yeah,
are still painting.
the kids who are creative, they find a way to be creative. The lazy one may be able to do a drawing which is fake, but
This is much more of a revelation than anything that's happened in human history.
We have a question there.
Yes,
yeah, but we don't know what's
yeah,
gonna
let's
be.
give some people in the other rows a chance to talk. Okay, great.
Thank you very much for this very nice presentation. It is really hard to think of only one question. And you mentioned in the beginning that research is for more than 70 years, but after the interest, it actually appears that the applications have picked up like in the last 10 years. I suppose it's a consequence of the work of Jeffrey Hinton, for instance, that application of deep learning. And so we can also imagine in the future that maybe new approaches, new algorithms will be developed that have different inherent risks and limitations and mistakes. And at the same time, we might think also that to consider the ethical consequences, we should be aware of those limitations that are technically dictated in some sense. So you mentioned, for instance, that training on a certain set of data happens. And so the question is there any validation? Is there any certification of the quality of the training set? Is there a selection at that stage happening? So are things trained on the excellent radiologists or just about what anyone writes and maybe it's and other ways of steering things in a direction just by understanding the mechanics better?
Yeah, there are a lot of these tests for bias in the data, bias in the content generated by the system, tests for content that is harmful and not respectful, so that should be avoided. So there are a lot of tests that are kind of standardized because there are benchmarks of data, of examples of scenarios where you test your large language model and you see the results of the test. Of course, all these systems are statistically based. So it means that they will never be 100% correct or 100% not having a certain undesired behavior. But there are, tests that you report on the results of the test on benchmarks, meaning that everybody more or less tests on the same kind of data. So you can compare how different large language models behave on those benchmark tests. And so there are tests for many different properties you want to have in your large language model, and companies that are transparent enough, they publish the results of these tests.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that particular point and connect it with the regulation that is, especially in Europe, has been introduced for this particular thing? Because now I feel that the general audience, the general person believe that now because we have a regulation, we feel safer to some extent because we don't know enough about technology. But one of the key requirements of the regulation itself is to perform extensive testing of whatever solution a company introduces in the market. Now, because of the complete novelty of the result of the solution, as you said, we cannot have 100% completeness and accuracy that these results are the right one. So my question is, how connected to the previous one is, how realistic is the enforcement of this law? Because we can never achieve 100% reliance on the execution of this test. Nobody can say, I am 100% sure that this test, the result of this solution are the right one because of, again, the complete novelty of the technology.
But it's not because of the complete novelty, it's because the way they are built, they are probabilistic and statistics based. It's not because it's novel. So I mean, take medicines. Medicines are once they are approved, it means that they are beneficial for the vast majority of people, but there is always a percentage of people for which they are not beneficial. Actually, they can be very harmful. But society has decided that this is still acceptable, right? So again, if you, I mean, AI has also techniques that are not statistical probabilistic based, but they are not. So that means that when they work, when they apply to your problem, they give you 100% correctness when they work, no? And when you can apply them to your problem. But the problem is that there are many problems, like interpreting an image or other things, or generating text, where these techniques do not work. So if you want techniques that help you in these other problems, perception problems, interpreting images, text, generating, and so on, then you need to use a statistical probabilistic based system, which intrinsically cannot give you 100% guarantee.
Yeah.
So then you have tests, and then you have thresholds above which you say, I'm happy that the test is passed above that threshold.
Right. No, I 100% agree with that. And makes perfect sense. My question though is, once we have the law, how can a regulator enforce the law given this kind of uncertainty, a level of acceptance that is?
So, for example, in Europe, there are going to be standards that are published by the CNELEC, which is the European standard body. And these standards are the ones that are going to tell you, everybody in Europe, in the European Union, what is the threshold, what is the test that you need to do, what are the benchmarks, So everything is going to be standardized according to standards that European Union publishes. No, it's not up to you to say, I'm happy with 80% threshold pass, or somebody else say, I'm happy with 70%, and so on. So it's going to be standardized.
Anya? See if that works. Project mine.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of observations that have been running through my mind. One is that my experience is that when businesses talk about what's happening, they're very careful about their sources of information for AI. Big data is big data, but you don't want big data if you could lose a lot of money on the decisions that you're making. So businesses are putting big guardrails on what's happening, and their AI, their utilization of the big data is very much on information that they are absolutely certain is accurate because they've scrubbed it. Which gets me to my next observation, is that what we're all worried about is AI making things up from really big data, because there's absolutely no editorial constraint on information on the internet. And finally, as far as the European law is concerned, it strikes me that it's like a lot of other things. It's caveat emptor. There should be a statement that this came from the big data. It drew from wherever it drew from. Nobody edited it. You're on your own, kids. So you go from there. And it's really the internet problem on steroids. When you can draw all of that information, which keeps building, we can do this because all the information keeps getting added, but who knows whether it's accurate information or not, and I think that's what we're all worried about. That's where AI makes stuff up, because they just kind of get there. And I think, it's a process, and it's the same kind of process. You kind of have to look to the people who are most affected by using it, and that's the establishment that can lose money. Go look at, the people who are doing that. They're the ones who are most concerned about the guardrails. Once you get beyond that, you're kind of on your own, and you've got the same risks you have in believing any unedited information on the internet, in my opinion. So those are my observations.
This phenomenon of hallucinations, so the fact that a large language model can generate text is not factually correct. This is not because the training data contains incorrect information. The training data can contain all pages which are completely 100% correct and factual, but still the way these systems are built and the way they combine.
Right, exactly. You reach the decision points, and if you go this way or that way, you're going to reach decision trees. So it's a matter of disclosure, which protects a lot of people in the world. We told you we did it this way. It's your fault if you used it. We told you how we got there. And I think that's a big part of the issue, the disclosure, that we used AI in coming to these conclusions, and we used the largest database we could and nobody scrubbed it, or we used the smallest database we could because it made a big difference for our business. It seems to me, we're just a long way away from getting any kind of standards that we can really articulate, because it's early, in some ways it's late stages, because this kind of usage of big data has been around for a very long time, but in another way, it's very early stages, because we've now opened it up to the general population as opposed to the specific users of medical, business, what have you.
Yeah, but as I said, the things are going to be standardized where there is a law, for example, in Europe, and you cannot just take a large language model trained on any data without giving any information on which data you've been training on, and then deploy it in Europe and then whatever, without any test. So, and I think that there will be also international standards, not just European or US, that will help in that respect, with the issue that you mentioned. So, I mean, I understand that you're saying you are on your own, but you're on your own with a lot of information that, if you want, is available to you, and it will tell you how the tests are passed, whether or not. But if they're not, then when there is a regulation that should be passed, then this is not going to be deployed.
Nothing ever replaces good judgment and common sense all the time, right? We listen to a certain radio station for the news. We might listen to another one because it plays our favorite jazz artist. But, like nothing, no matter how much data is served up to you, you still have to think about, how you've gotten that information and what it is. I mean, we aren't suggesting, or at least I don't think we're suggesting, that people should just blindly accept all data that comes to them.
Yeah, but to be fair, if the use of AI to generate or not checking that what is published is factually correct can create confusion in people.
Right.
And that is impacting your capability of making a good judgment. No? So that's an important ecosystem to address and issues to address well, because again, fact checking in some scenarios have been eliminated, no? So you have to be careful about what an image that you see. How do you know? Already we are at the point of not being really sure whether it's true or not. Usually when I click on a post and it takes me to a place that is full of ads, I know probably that's not true. That's not a true post, right? But so if these things get more and more, then people may lose the ability of of a good judgment, no? And that's important to retain that. Yeah.
There was a question
Yes.
here.
Every day's been, I did get the feeling that everyone's thinking it's detrimental. Biggest business in the world right now in the United States is healthcare. It's 20% of your gross national product. Okay. You made the comment about and being a practicing physician, I'm a practicing orthopedic surgeon. You made the comment that they said something, you have 3 of you reading the same thing, you have to do 4 of them. 10 hospital administrators for every physician in the United States. Their salaries have gone up 712% in the last 7 years. Massive data in healthcare is bigger than anything. But if we could take that, it can make me a better surgeon because I may miss something that at the end of it will tell me, hey, you didn't order the Lyme disease on that knee aspiration. You didn't do this. That's the thing. The comment he made about, and I'll ask you, there's times you say, well, I forgot that one little thing. They didn't have the history. The radiologist is the worst because they get thrown on an x-ray and read it for me, but they don't give him any history and tell him what's going on. He's got to go look for it. It's bad,
Yeah,
right?
when the number are so big, right, as you said, even a small change. So we deploy now in AI systems in the new enterprise to detect breast cancer from mammograms. The AI detects one more cancer out of every 1,000 mammograms, but you do so many mammograms, that's a huge number, huge success.
And that's the part I think it's really the other part is that the thing that is you take that message, you never take away that final decision. It has to be made by a human. That should be made by the academies. So now you give them massive data and say, she writes an article and I think it's the greatest thing, so I start doing it. She writes another article and then I start doing it. Instead, the academy could be looking at all this and saying, this one is really good. This one is really not good. So that's the future you really can see. And I see it in healthcare myself. I mean, I'm practicing, probably the oldest practicing physician at our hospital. But, you know, younger people right now, with all that's going on, 1 out of every 4 first-year medical students are dropping out. We're short of physicians right now.
Why?
And even the training of the medical students, you can do with AI. We do now we call precision education. So when you train the radiologist, you only see the cases. You can basically you do a first round, and you know where is bad, where is good, and he's going to be presented only the cases where he usually fails, so he improves on that. So you can do really a tailored education.
I think the key thing is where you are to make sure that you've never eliminated. It's great to have all the technical minds, and what's in your head, I can't even imagine. But the physicians, we really still need them to be involved in what you're designing, because I can give you that massive information, but that's the part I think is analyzing massive information to give us a better outcome on patient care.
So maybe at this point, you know, we can mention the other Nobel Prize, which was given to a team of people that used AI to solve the protein folding problem. The problem was open for many, many years, decades, and that researchers were working on, and it's the problem of understanding the 3D folding of the protein, which is very related to the functionality of the protein, from its list of components. And researchers were doing that. For every protein, they were spending many, many years, you know, of tests to do that. And this AI system was able to basically solve the problem once and for all. And this team has been given the Nobel Prize in chemistry this year. And that's that's an application of AI to other disciplines, sciences, to accelerate the even scientific discoveries. Besides the fact that they can help the people working in this, like the researchers that were working in that field. And in terms of medicine, of course, I'm not familiar deeply, and so I'm maybe very naive, but I also feel that there are many situations in which a doctor needs to look at not just one organ, one specialty, but all the body, all the organs together in order to understand well what's the diagnosis for that patient. And this combination of data from all the pieces of a patient, I think that's something that AI can help. Another aspect is that imagine what AI can do. You can imagine what AI can do to the clinicians in the US or in Europe or in developed countries. But imagine what it can do to doctors in Africa or in developing countries. They don't have access to articles, to training, no? So AI there can really make a big, big difference.
And as you mentioned, the AlphaFold and drug development is completely affected by AI and antibiotics. They haven't discovered any antibiotics in decades. Now with AI, they're coming out. Then they have to check if they work, if they're safe and stuff, but they're coming out with thousands every month. It's really changing the field.
So I think on that note, we'll wrap up and say that, we're serving a light supper, so the conversation can continue casually. Francesca and Riccardo are not running away. You can prevent them from eating by asking them a lot of questions. But we'll have some tables set up and there's a buffet. And I really want to thank both of you for a stimulating conversation and our sponsors.